Hey everybody, Happy New Year. So I'm on travel and doing this video with, not the best headset in the world with microphone. So I apologize for that. But let's get into the video. And this one we're going to talk about should you choose the i5 13600K or the i5 12600K, i7 12700 or i7 13700. So the agenda, I'll give you some preliminary thoughts. Then we'll compare the two unlocked CPUs, the two locked CPUs, talk about motherboards, and then which is better for you, and then a brief summary. So I don't have a slide here for the preliminary thoughts, but you know, 12th gen was definitely better than 11th gen, right? Just like 11th gen was better than 10th gen, etc. 12th gen at this point is a very stable family, we'll call it, generation, whatever, used with the 600 series motherboards, or for that matter, with the 700 series motherboard. Not a whole lot of headaches are involved with using 12th gen at this point. Now, 13th gen, there are definitely some headaches associated with those. Whether the BIOS update might have been holding some people back, right? So depending on your motherboard, you definitely would need a BIOS update for the 600 series motherboards. Sometimes those motherboards had the ability to be updated without a CPU installed. Others required a 12th gen CPU to update so that you could use them with 13th gen. Of course, the 700 series motherboards doesn't matter. You're good to go out of the box. Now, 13th gen, overall runs hotter than the comparative 12th gen, can use more power. And, these things may affect your power consumption. So your power bill may go up. You may also need a better CPU cooler between the two types that we're going to compare here. All right. Now, the other thing, folks, is, you know, whether to buy integrated or a CPU that doesn't have integrated graphics. All right. So, for the noobs out there that have never built a computer before, or maybe this is your second one, I recommend that you buy CPU with integrated graphics. Now, those of you that have experience and maybe have a graphics card sitting around or two, um, your best bet is probably buying the CPU um, without integrated graphics. So, what's the difference? Well, you'll see there's an i5 13600K. There's also a KF. The 13600K has integrated graphics. The 13600KF does not. All right. You'll see there's a price difference there. You will save some money not getting the integrated graphics, but for those that don't have a lot of experience, troubleshooting is a lot easier when you have integrated graphics, all right? So if there's not much price difference, regardless, it's always best to get integrated graphics. If the price difference is significant and you have experience, then going after the CPU that doesn't have integrated graphics would be the best bet. All right, first we're going to compare the i5 13600K versus the i5 12600K. So if you've been doing any kind of analysis, research, whatever, you know the 13600K is significantly better in benchmarks. It's also better than the i7 12700. In gaming, the i5 13600K is moderately better. You'll see, differences between games. Also running overclocks, you may or may not see much improvement, but you will see improvement in your multi-core score, which may also improve something like video editing. So, running overclocks might be a good thing. Price difference between these. So on the left there, we have 319 price. That's the i5 13600K. The 308 price is the i5 13600KF. So $11 difference. The i5 12600K is 247 and the KF version is 243. So now, if you were to go with an i5 12600K, you would want to buy that one versus the KF. If you're looking at the i5 13600K, this is a place, where $11, maybe it matters to you, maybe it doesn't. But like I said, if you have experience, get the KF to save the money. But, your life will be easier troubleshooting regardless if you have the i5 13600K over the KF. CPU coolers. So both of these CPUs, or all four of them, whichever way you want to look at it, they're going to require a premium cooler. Now you could get away with spending $20 to $30 if you're not going to overclock. That is the bare minimum, and it's also dependent on what motherboard you find that you buy. So I've had issues with some of these motherboards where they run significantly hotter. The CPU runs significantly hotter than it does in the other motherboards. So keep that in mind. Now expect to spend over 100 if you're going to overclock. If you need a big old CPU cooler, maybe you're looking at a Noctua D14, D15, or a water cooler. The better ones are usually over $100. Maybe you're looking at a 360, 280. Not necessary to have a 420 with the CPU. Now temperatures, between the two CPUs, the i5 13600K is going to run hotter. It also, can consume more power, which I don't have a slide here for that. And so, more power is going to mean more heat, which is going to mean your electric bill is going to go up, and you probably need a better CPU cooler at a minimum over the i5 12600K. Now, i7 13700 versus i7 12700. Once again, 13th gen superior to the 12th gen gaming. It's going to be better. Now, at this point, though, it's questionable. Hey, is it better than the i5 13600K? They're going to be comparative. And this goes back, years and years of dealing with different generations and how these compare. And I've over the years bought a lot of the same CPUs from generation to generation, so they will be in the same ballpark. Um, Now with a overclock on the i5 13600K, you are able in certain games to approach the numbers that you might get out of an i9 13900K. So um, overclocking could allow you definitely to see improvement over the i7 13700. If you're doing editing, there is the potential that the i7 13700 may do better than the i5 13600K. Now, things you can do for both of these to improve performance: adjust power limits. That uses more power, but it can improve the quickness that editing is done. And an overclock on the other CPU, the i5 13600K, may allow you to have better time of processing versus the i7 13700. So the price difference there, i7 13700 409 versus the i7 12700, so you're talking $84. And if we shoot back, 319 compared to 409, that's $90. And on the other one, 247 to 325, so $78 difference there. And so you can kind of see, what might be the best deal between all these CPUs for the best performance. Now, CPU cooler, both these are going to come with a stock cooler, right? Nothing spectacular about it. You may want to upgrade to a premium cooler. At the low end, $20 to $30 is probably what you're looking at. At the high end, you could spend 50 to 100 if you want better cooling or RGB, right? Temperatures, i7 13700 is going to run hotter than the 12th gen i7. Power usage, you can see that at the bottom there, 65 to 219 watts for the 13700 versus 65 to 180. So you can use more power with the 13700, but your gaming, will improve. Your benchmarking will improve. Your, ability to process 4K video for editing will improve. So, there's a trade-off there, right? Return on investment that only you will probably be able to figure out. Now, motherboards, I've went ahead and crossed off H610M. I just not a big fan of that one at all for any of the CPUs we're looking at here. So 600 series, what's out there? You had B660, B660M, H670, H670M. You also have the ITX versions of those. And then there's the Z690, Z690M, and the Z690i. So looking at the line with B660 on it, this is your best bet for 12th gen locked CPU or 12th gen unlocked CPUs with no plans for overclocking, all right? Depending on which motherboard you get though, you could throw in some 13 gens into this, but really, for less headaches, these are your best bets for 12th gen and not so much your best bet for 13 gen. Now Z690, Z690M, Z690i, best for unlocked 12th gen CPU. Of course, you can put any of these other CPUs in here, but with the 13th gen, there's the potential for additional headache with the BIOS update. Now, what we have here in the future is B760, B760M, H770, H770M. These are best, for 13th gen lock CPUs, or for those of you that want to get a 13th gen unlocked CPU with no plans for an overclock. And then for the unlocked CPUs and people that want to overclock, the Z790, Z790M, and Z790i be the best. So from tests I've done, you may not see any difference really in gaming or in benchmarks between a higher end B660 and something like a Z790. All right. Now, if you overclock, you can't overclock on, anything but the Z690 and Z790s. Which is better for you? Okay. Do you like to tinker or want to set it and forget it? So, for those that like to tinker with stuff, an i5 13600K is by far the, going to provide the best performance, I believe, out of these four CPUs. If you're into overclocking, uh, but at what cost, right? So it's going to use more power and it's going to cost you by needing a better CPU cooler. If you only care about gaming, once again, hey, that i5 13600K is potentially your best bet. Now, are you planning to upgrade and already have an LGA 1700 motherboard? So this is another thing, to look at here. If you're stuck in an i3 i3 12100 and you want to upgrade from there, well, you could potentially do a BIOS update and then you are looking at 13th gen as a possibility, all right? So there is really the main things here. Motherboards, we didn't necessarily get into cost, but let's back up one slide. This family of 700 series in comparison to these is more expensive. All right. So if you're looking at 13 gen, you don't want to have headaches. Um, you're going to want the 700 series motherboards. It's going to cost you more money for potentially the 700 series motherboard, potentially for slightly better CPU cooler than what you might need with 12th gen. Now, 12th gen wise, if you um, want less headaches, already have an LGA 1700 motherboard, or don't have as much money to spend, then maybe your best bet is the i5 12600K or the i7 12700. Now, if you don't want to tinker with something, like your CPU, but you want the best performance for multi-core tasking, then, looking at the i7 13700, and also assuming that you have a decent amount of money to have the better motherboard, then that may be the best bet for you. So a lot of stuff to look at, folks. It's kind of depends on financial situation, depends on how capable you are as far as building a computer and tinkering with the computer. Um, you may also look at your electric costs in your area. Whether it's worth the money to be running an overclock on your CPU, adjusting the power limits higher to get everything you can get out of them. All right, so summary. So which one should you choose? Really, this is um, I'm trying to help here, but it's really going to end up being your decision because there is no clear-cut winner. If there was a clear-cut winner, Intel would potentially, I think, stop production of the 12th gens and just go straight to these 13th gens, and then you would see a significant reason why you should pick um, an i5 13600K over the i7 13700. A lot of it might be price, right? So I think for performance, between the i5 13600K and the i7 13700, the price is right on the i5 13600K. Now, if you don't want the headache, you don't want to have to really spend a lot of money on a CPU cooler, the i7 12700 might not be such a bad direction either. But hey, thanks for checking out my video, folks. Uh, if this was helpful, please subscribe and like the video, assuming you liked it.